Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. Today we're going to be talking about the house, and we're going to be talking about the kids getting into the house, but specifically, not just any old kids, but Eddie and Sam. Not really caring so much about Dempsey, Nikolai, Takio right now because we know their stories, that's fine and dandy, it's pretty much concrete and we don't need to explore it, but Eddie and Sam, in my opinion, are still a little mysterious. So, first of all, I'm going to explain what's on this board here, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty details of why this is an interesting topic, okay? So, we've got at the top of this board here, the black timeline, which is pretty much Black Ops 3, okay? We've got Origins, right? Origins happens, then end of the Origins cutscene, they teleport away. There's a 2-year gap from the frame of reference of Nikolai, Takio, and Dempsey. They experience 2 years of time, and then Shadows of Evil happens, Richmond grabs the key, and they then end up at the Giant, and they kill Richmond 1.0, and then they travel to Der Eisendrache, and they kill Dempsey 1.0, and then they travel to Zetsubo no Shima, and they kill Takio 1.0, and then they quick zip away from Zetsubo no Shima, they zip somewhere between universes, zip back again to Zetsubo no Shima here, and then they go to GK, and then presumably they go on to the house. So that's one progression of events, okay? The black timeline at the top there is pretty much Black Ops 3. Fine. The blue timeline here is embedded within the 2-year gap, okay? We've got the Origins ending where Eddie's already there, it's dark times outside, not so great, sirens go off, it's pre-catastrophic event, then the catastrophic event will happen, you got no sirens for several months, Monty arrives, does the rewind, the countryside's restored, Maxis starts going on his walks again, you end up with the Chronorium making an appearance, and thus the summoning key making an appearance, and thus we end up back at Shadows of Evil. And so in that particular example, we see a timeline that is embedded within the story before Shadows because it ends with Shadows of Evil, okay? Pretty standard stuff. So this is something that really shouldn't come as any surprise right now. This is the very generic story that we've come to, I guess, get used to over the last couple of months with Black Ops 3, but the interesting thing, in my mind, is that Eddie and Sam's entry into the house is not included in here, it's still ambiguous. We know that Sam was in the house before Eddie, we can kind of make a guess that Maxis was in the house before Sam because he was the first, that's mentioned a few times, but that could also be interpreted in other ways as well. So we won't say that categorically without a shadow of a doubt, but it would make sense, I guess, for Maxis to be there first, seeing as he is trying to establish this perfect world and trying to do his thing, then has a kid or whatever, and that comes to pass. So, this is fine, but a friend of mine called Doppelganger has said the following: Milo, let's just think for a moment about the possibility that Eddie enters the house after the Giant, because the 1.0 soul of Richtofen should have been collected in the Giant, and as such, his soul should have gone up to Maxis after the Giant, and as such, he should have been in the house only since then. But there's a sort of problem with that, okay? So we've got our timeline here. If he enters in the Giant there, then it completely puts this timeline out of whack, because this timeline has to end with Shadows of Evil. We have this Origins ending, and right now I've got it at the start of this timeline pre-bombs, pre-catastrophic event. But you could argue that it would go elsewhere. But I would then say that that doesn't really work because there are sirens in there, and the sirens aren't meant to sound for several months after the bombs have gone off, and then you have the rewind happening, and at that point you're tumbling forwards into the summoning key being found and Shadows of Evil happening, and so you can't really shift this any further up. And what I've just said also highlights an issue with the whole idea of the Giant being the inception of Eddie, Kid Eddie, into the house, because if this is at the beginning, and you've got this layout, then the problem you have is that Eddie is already in the house here. And so, if this has to be at the beginning, as I've just explained, then there has to be some real paradoxical and impossible stuff going on if we're trying to assume that this stuff happens after the Giant, but then also pre-Shadows of Evil. It just doesn't work. So, that's one thing that I wanted to touch on here because I was talking to Doppelganger about it, and he was saying, well, yeah, I mean, like, you know, maybe it's something we can work in and we can try and figure out. And so I drew this out and I started trying to work it around, and I brought that forwards when Eddie is already in the house, and I tried to move it until after Shadows of Evil, and I tried to just shift it about, but it just didn't quite fit. So that particular theory, I think we can kind of agree on being not quite the case, but I've been talking to my friend Mac about this, I've been talking to one or two other people as well, Liz, and we're a little bit unsure, I guess, on exactly when it is that Sam and Eddie are getting into the house, if not in that particular instance. It's just a bit of a weird one, because some people, this is via Liz, Liz has said that some people think that the MPD, going into the MPD, means that somehow your soul gets into the house. That's something that she has seen people talking about online or something like that. I have an issue with that theory. I think that that just sounds like a bit of a cop-out. It doesn't really sound like it makes much sense to me. Like, why would going into the MPD just automatically put your soul in the house? Seems real weird. But I guess if people are saying that, then maybe that's a theory that you guys might agree with, and if you do, then please flesh it out in the comments down below and explain to me why you think that's the case. But if that's not the case, then I guess we're left with the question of when does Samantha get into the house? Because that's really the starting point of all this. Regardless of Maxis, if we don't worry too much about Maxis, when does Samantha get into the house? Sam has to come before Eddie, that's for sure. Eddie is an interesting one because he's introduced actually in written text in one of the messages that I believe we had from Der Eisendrache saying, "Father introduced me to a new friend today. He doesn't like to share the toys. He's just arrived." That is Eddie entering the house, seemingly with Samantha. So that's a really interesting one. But it still doesn't give us any real basis or concrete sort of foundation for whereabouts or whenabouts this is actually happening. It's also odd that if we are considering Maxis being the first to enter the house, if those quotes that we have are exactly related to this rather than something else, then it's an odd one because Maxis, you would presume, goes up into the house at the end of the Origins Easter egg. But I think that Maxis was already there at that point. So it's almost like he's already in the house, and then Monty gets like a surplus brain from the Origins ending, and that's like just an added bonus or something, but he still doesn't have the soul of Maxis, which is just, oh man, I mean, it's clearly a rather messy topic. It's clearly something that is kind of hard to wrap your head around, and I feel like right now, there aren't any theories that I have seen that work here. Because Sam getting into the house is so ambiguous, they've left it so open to guessing, and sort of the same with Eddie as well, and even with Maxis, that I just think that it's going to take some real sleuthing in order to figure out what's going on here. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. Thank you for watching the video. Hopefully this has been a fun little way of actually sort of looking at the timeline that we've got right now, and you appreciate that. Maybe you'll leave a like for it. Thanks for watching though, like I've said. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below because it's theory time. We've got to discuss this together, and I'll see you very soon in another Revelations video. Bye-bye.